So one of the things we always like to start with, something you already started to lean into, is your story. Uh, how did you get here? How did Charity become CEO of a company?
CTO now. I was CEO for the first 3.5 years, but I've been CTO for the last 1.5 years.
Well, there you go.
A very long and winding and strange road, I guess. I was homeschooled, and I grew up in Idaho in the middle of nowhere. Didn't have computers growing up. I went to college on a classical piano performance scholarship, but pretty quickly figured out that all musicians were poor, and I didn't want to be poor. So I swapped keyboards. I've always loved just kind of tinkering with computers. So I got a job as a sysadmin. Came to San Francisco shortly thereafter, and I've been opsing ever since. I kind of made a career out of being the the very first infrastructure engineer that gets hired into a team where the software engineers think they have something that's real, but they need somebody to help it grow up. So that's what I've been doing. I did it at Linden Lab. I did it a couple startups that nobody's ever heard of, and then Parse, which was acquired by Facebook, which leads us here.
So that's a bit of a winding tale. How does that get you to observability as your domain of expertise? How does that bring you
Yeah.
here?
Well, at Parse, we were building this giant for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Parse was kind of like Heroku, but for mobile. If you have a mobile app, we have APIs and SDKs, so you can write a whole mobile app without ever having to do any backend scaling stuff. And it was this large multi-tenant platform, and it was really kind of professionally humiliating to me, just how poor our reliability was. It was up and down all the time because we had a pool of web servers, and whenever they got saturated, whenever any of the databases or whenever any app hit the top 10 the iTunes store, whenever anything happened, they all went down. And I tried everything to get more visibility. I tried every monitoring software, I tried every logging tool, I tried every APM software, and they just they were great at helping me figure out the things that I already knew would break, right? Like once I knew something would take the system down, I could create a monitoring check for it, or I could create dashboards for it. But this system was unlike any other that I ever worked on, where they weren't failing repeatedly in the same way over and over. It was a different freaking app every single time, and there was no way, breaking down by, a high cardinality dimension like app ID, just wasn't possible. I tried every tool out there, none of them helped, until we were at Facebook, and there was this one tool there that we started using called Scuba, which is this butt ugly tool that is aggressively hostile to users, but it does one thing really well, which is it lets you slice and dice on high cardinality dimensions in real time. None of this craft a query and go off to go to the bathroom and get coffee, none of that, but just you could slice and dice. So you could break down by app ID, break down by endpoint, break down by error, and just chain them all together. And having this kind of a tool, it took the amount of time it took us to diagnose and fix these problems, dropped from, God knows, hours, days, sometimes never, to not even minutes, seconds. It wasn't even an engineering problem anymore. It was a support problem. And this made such an impact on me because obviously, right? And we started getting a handle on reliability and blah, blah, blah. But when I was leaving Facebook, I was planning to go be an engine manager at Slack or Stripe or something. And I suddenly went, oh shit, I don't know how to engineer anymore without this tooling that we've built around this, this ability to it was so unthinkable to me. I felt like such a poor engineer without the ability, because it wasn't just about getting the site back up when it was down. It was like my 5 senses for production. It's all about how do I understand what's going on? How do I decide what to work on? How do I validate as I'm building it that it's doing what I expected it to do? There was just this tight feedback loop that I had become accustomed to that just wasn't possible using anything else. So, Christina, and that plus, I had a pedigree for the first time in my life, right? Leaving Facebook, I have a pedigree. So VCs are chasing me, which is kind of annoying because I wasn't a better engineer exiting Facebook than I was ever before then. But like, they're like, have some dollars. And I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll take your money. We're definitely going to fail because I saw it as being this very niche, like for large multi-tenant platforms, and I'm like, well, there's probably, a couple dozen companies in the world that need this, but I'll take your money. We'll go build it. We'll fail and we'll open source it. so then I'll have it, right? Deal. And over the course of the first year of it, like we started out by writing a storage engine, which our investors were like, what are you doing? Because you're supposed to get it in front of users as soon as possible. And we're over here like building a storage engine first. They're like, oh, could you not? But also just trying to figure out how to talk about what we were building, because we knew it wasn't monitoring, right? We knew it wasn't a reactive tool. We knew that it wasn't anything quite like any of the tools that were out there. And 7 months after we started in January, and it was July, I found in my chat logs, it was July when I Googled the definition of observability. Nobody was using it, right? It was just kind of like, I think I'd heard it a few years ago, whatever. But I Googled the definition, and it came from mechanical engineering, from control systems theory. And it was all about, can you understand what's happening on the inside of your system just by looking at it from the outside? And I just started to have light bulbs just going, oh my God, this is what we're trying to do, right? It's about understanding any novel state that your system can get itself into, whether or not you've ever experienced it before, whether or not it's ever happened before, just be able to ask the right questions from the outside to understand it, so you're not, without having to ship new code to understand it, right? Because so often it takes like all this wizardry, and we finally figure it out by guessing and all this stuff, and so we'll ship some custom code to handle it, right? So we can find it next time. And once I started to realize that that's what we're building, like so much falls out of that. Like if we say that, oh, sorry, like getting so excited, talking so fast. If we say that what we want is to be able to answer any question about any inner system state, well, what proceeds from that? Well, it means that anything that has a fixed schema is verboten, right? Because you can't define up front what kind of dimensions you're going to need to understand. It means you need to encourage people to just toss in details whenever they might think of them, right? Just like, oh, this might be useful someday, throw it in. This might be useful someday, throw it in, right? Anything that involves indexing is verboten, because you don't want to have to decide up front what's going to be efficient to query on. You need everything to be equally efficient, right? So that's why we needed to build a column or store database. Other things like it has to be able to handle high cardinality and high dimensionality too. The ability to stack together as many of these high cardinality dimensions as you want, because that's how you're able to ask and answer questions like, oh, there's a spike in errors. Well, what do they have in common, right? Well, it relies on these arbitrarily wide structured data blobs, because all of that stuff is bundled together. It's around the user's perspective of their experience, right? So you're able to correlate and go, oh, those errors, all of them are for users that are on this version of iOS, this language pack, using this database shard, using this version of the build ID, using from this region, right? You have to be able to like all of them, and like, so anyway, I could go on, but like all of these things proceed from that simple definition that, you need to be able to ask any question to understand your systems without any prior knowledge. And so that's how Honeycomb came about. And the thing is that once we realized that, sorry, I'm almost done. Once we realized that, we started to realize, oh, this isn't a niche problem after all. This is an everyone problem. This is and all of the trends in computing are going towards, heterogeneity, like these far-flung complex systems, many of which you don't have insight into in the background, and all you can rely on is your instrumentation, and like being able to like app ID and like all the way down to like your containers and like everything's high cardinality and everything matters, and everyone now has these problems.
Love it.
Yep, me too. So I believe Noah and I both have an ops background, so it's nice having someone on here that can sink that in a little bit. I like the idea of cardinality, in doing things and being able to stack those bits of information.
Can we define that for people real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, high cardinality just means Like imagine you have a collection of like 100 million users and a bunch of data about them. The highest possible cardinality dimensions will always be any unique ID. So like social security number, right? Or row number. The lowest possible cardinality is always going to be like a species equals human, right? So like high cardinality dimensions will be first name and last name, right? They're not quite as large as like row number, but and gender is going to be fairly low cardinality, although, you know, not as low as species. So when you're looking at debugging and understanding complex system, what is the most identifying information? Well, it's almost always going to be those high cardinality dimensions, because that if you can track it down to one of those, like as soon as you found like a trace ID that describes your problem, job over, right? Which is why it's unfortunate that like metric systems are explicitly designed for only low cardinality data. That's how they are so cheap.
Yeah. So going to that, what is the difference? Can you explain to everybody what the difference is between observability and telemetry?
Oh yeah, telemetry is just it's broad. It's just a name that encompasses all, you know, metrics, data, all the data that you use to understand your system. What's unfortunate is that more and more I keep hearing people use observability as a synonym of telemetry, and I'm like, no, guys, we already have a name we already have the word telemetry. We don't need two words for it. My preference would be that, you know, observability be understood to be something different, because like I said, it's more identifying, right? I think that it helps people understand what is different about these newer kinds of tools and how it solves these newer problems. Because like monitoring is a very mature, well understood, you know, discipline, but many of the best practices are like the opposite of the best practices for observability. And I think that if we don't, and I understand why all of the marketing departments out there are like, we do observability too, because it's always cheaper to adopt a new term than it is to build the actual feature sets. But it's a little bit unfortunate. And I hope that as their tools start to get those feature sets, maybe their interest will lie a little bit more in being more specific with their words as well. But we'll see.
That, I think that ties really into one of the things that really excited me about getting you on and having this conversation when you suggested the topic, the real definition of observability. I think the word observability in and of itself is something that people can hear it. And unlike telemetry, that's not something that comes up in day-to-day conversation.
Right.
But you say the word observe and people sort of have this innate understanding of, okay, I know what the verb observe means.
Yeah.
So I have some idea of what observability is going to be.
Yeah.
Even if they are wrong about what it is going to be. And I know you mentioned earlier on that in the existing definitions of observability, people are putting things in buckets. And you didn't like that definition, right? Can you talk to that a little bit?
You mean the 3 pillars thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty obvious from my point of view that the reason that they say there are 3 pillars are because they have 3 different products to sell you. They have a metrics product, they have a logging product, and they have a tracing product. Therefore, you must need all 3. When in fact, that's pretty ass backwards, if you ask me, because I mean, how many ways to go about describing this? You know, observability relies on, you know, its source needs to be this arbitrarily wide structured data blob that describes the user's experience, right? 1 per request per service. And you can think of that in a lot of ways. It's like we blew up the monolith, so we can no longer attach a debug. We can't just go to GDB and step through, right? We can't do that anymore. So we needed to find a way to like take that context and like pass it around so that you can correlate, you know, things that are happening at this system, this service versus this service, but they're part of the same request, right? You need to be able to like pass those IDs around and stuff. So that's part of what we're doing in the instrumentation way of observability. What was your question? Oh, no, I fixed them. What was your question actually?
It was how are the pillars wrong?
Yeah. How are the pillars wrong? Right. So, but honestly, observability itself speaks more to a quality of a system, right? It's the ability to answer these questions. And the only reason I'm saying that it needs to be focused on the arbitrarily wide structured data blob is because I have not yet seen anybody implement a system based on metrics or logs or traces that is capable of answering these questions, right? So I'm not trying to get religious and dogmatic about it. It's just that definitionally, this is the only way I've seen to do it. Because you can derive metrics from a arbitrarily wide structured data blob. You can derive logs from it. You can derive traces from it if you have tracing IDs that you perpetuate. But you can't go in the other direction, right? You can't have a bunch of metrics and get a request, a wide blob request for it, because you discarded all that connected tissue at the right time. So I think that it's a bit disingenuous. I think that ultimately what matters is what you're able to do with the tool, your ability to like understand the system. And like metrics and logs, and they're just data types, right? It's kind of like saying, the 3 pillars of databases are indexes, rows, and columns. It's just like, it's kind of senseless. It doesn't mean anything. What matters is, can you get the job done? And fundamentally, like, I think that a lot of, I don't want to throw too many bombs here, but like, monitoring and metrics are the right tool for the job for infrastructure, more or less. I think infrastructure being defined as the stuff that you have to do to get to the stuff that you want to do, right? And the stuff that is your bread and butter, if you're a software company, the code that you write, that is your bread and butter, that's the stuff that you want to do. And for that, you're always going to need observability, not monitoring and metrics, because you care about the end user's experience. You care about that more than, is my service, up? Like, what is the meaning of up? If your users aren't using it, it's not up, right? Like, and so you're always going to want to be the other thing that it does is it speaks the language of functions. It speaks the language of endpoints. It speaks not the language of low level system stuff, right? Because I don't think that you can expect most software engineers to like stare at, the 4 different types of RAM and, all of the proc IPv6, blah, 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 like, our job as ops has traditionally been to sit between the software engineers and the hardware and kind of explain to each other what's going on, right? But that's kind of inefficient, and I think that observability is part of helping developers actually own their own services.
Yeah, that's great. This is a good segue into my next question. Sitting in between the software developer and the infrastructure, eBPF lately has become, especially in like the last 3 or 4 years, has become really big in observability, especially in the Kubernetes track where things are so ephemeral. And, and it's great. And, everybody's starting to tap into that. And it's been really awesome to push observability forward. Moving beyond that, where do you see us going now that eBPF is kind of being used so widely and it's accepted? People are starting to actually execute on eBPF.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see eBPF as being somewhat lower level systemsy stuff in observability. If what you are doing is, if you're Amazon, you're taking care of racks of servers and everything, then holy hell, you need that stuff. But I honestly don't think it's the right tool most of the time for software engineers who are writing and shipping code every day. I think that they need a little bit of it, a taste of it, right? But it's not their bread and butter. And the reason so many people automatically go to that is because they have such a long history of only having ops tools and like low-level systems-y tools. But like, so for example, think about serverless, right? I think that thinking about the way serverless does instrumentation is a really good way about thinking just sort of, what the platonic ideal of instrumentation should look like for your average software engineer. You don't have access to the underlying stuff, right? And somehow you manage, right? Like you know how to instrument your code to, handle retries, handle backups, you learn when something is down, you know how to handle it, but you don't have to have all of the information of the underlying services to get your work done. That said, when you have some, it can be really handy, right? It's really great if you can ship some code and then go and look and see, oh, the memory usage just tripled. That's a great use, right? Or if you're suddenly saturating your CPU, right? But there's really not more than like maybe half a dozen of those that I think that really regularly need to be exported into the realm of the engineer who's writing and shipping code in production. And for the most, it's not that they're not useful. It's just that they're not you shouldn't need them to get your job done as a person writing and shipping code as application software, right? There's something wrong if you have to resort to that too much.
That totally makes sense.
Yep.
So in that sense of evolution, so eBPF is a big thing that's come up. You've got whatever your developer tools are. What do you see has been the most important pieces sort of historically, and what do you see as being the most important pieces in terms of development? Because you said like observability has sort of evolved out of, not really out of a set of tools, but more of out of a lack of observability.
Yeah.
What do you see that growth being, and what do you see having been the most important pieces? Let's talk a little bit about timeline here.
Sorry, can you rephrase?
I'm sort of I'm sort of rolling two questions together. What do you think were the most important pieces historically that brought us to here, and where do you think we're going?
I think that historically, like, other than like Honeycomb, which you're right, kind of came out of left field. Like it did not grow out of the 20, 30 years of, traditional systems monitoring software. Tracing, I think, is the most important antecedent or precedent. I think tracing, honestly, a trace is just an arbitrarily wide structured data blob with a trace ID and a span ID and some special fields appended. And I think that along with blowing up the monolith and your request is now hopping around, tracing has suddenly become non-optional for a lot of people. Tracing, however, has a history of being very hard, unfriendly, sort of hard to roll out. Like it's like there are a couple of obstacles or a couple of things you observe when it comes to tracing. One is that until it's like 100% rolled out, you don't get any benefit from it, which means that it's hard to get the buy-in to actually like expend all of the energy to get it rolled out everywhere. And secondly, a thing that I've noticed again and again is that you look at a shop that's rolled it all out, got everything instrumented, you go there a year later and you want to trace something, and everybody's like, oh, go ask that person. That's the tracing guy. It's not a tool that finds like full permutation, like that the entire team puts in their toolkit and like uses every day. But it's like there's one or two people who know how to use it, and when you have trouble, you go to those people as your experts. And that's unfortunate. And I think that's something we've got to block. That's a pattern we have to break, right? In order, I think that a lot of times, the hardest part in finding bugs in the systems and so forth is not debugging the code or rewriting the code. It's finding where in the system is the code that I need to debug or fix. And tracing is such a key important part of that. Just because you've got so many things. And it's not even just all the services. It's all the different storage systems. It's your polyglot. You polyglot this and that. It's not. The reason monitoring worked so well for so long was that you had the load balancer, the application, and the database, right? And it's like, okay, dashboards, super helpful, right? Those are very clear inputs and outputs. All the complexity is really wrapped up inside the application, except little bits in the database. You've got your DBA for that. And now it's just like, okay, well, now ops is everyone's problem, right? Because it's just boing, 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 boing. So, and the databases, are not customized. They're not a priesthood so much anymore either. It's usually in the realm of the ops people and the developers to understand them. So where we're coming, where we come from, I think that tracing has a lot to do with observability. You think of it as like, early observability stuff. It's just that, I think that instead of starting with tracing, some of the tracing tools out there, they're kind of trace first, high cardinality second. And I think what you actually want is the Honeycomb model of high cardinality first and trace second, because you want to find the problem and then trace it and then blah, blah, blah. And as far as where we're going, I mean, I get a little cynical or like, I talk some shit about various players in the marketplace for their cargo culting from time to time. But I do think that that all the major players in logging, monitoring metrics, APM, even some adjacent like database companies have all changed their roadmap to the point where they're trying to look like Honeycomb. They're trying to move their technology to match Honeycomb's tech faster than we can grow up our business side to match theirs. So I think that over the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot of these tools bake in exactly what Honeycomb has done. And I don't say that because I'm like, we're the best. It's just that like some of these things are just kind of by default, they're the right things, right? Like we just made the right trade-offs because we were able to kind of step outside of the tradition and start from scratch. And they're just the right way to do it. But that doesn't mean we'll win. So the history is littered with the stories of companies that did it right and didn't win.
No, that's so true. We have a good question. Go ahead.
Another thing that I would throw in there is the trend towards having consumer quality developer tools, towards not building tools for developers and engineers like they're engineers, like no more Vim bindings, and building it for you, like for us, like we're humans, like we have a job to do, like we're trying to get our job done, not trying to learn the tool, right? And I think that to the extent that these tools can make these complex systems sensible and intuitive and to the point where you get a good dopamine hit every time you go and look at your tool instead of a, oh God, every time you go and look at your tool, right? To the extent that we can solve that, I think that we will win.
So on that point, do you think that the growth of observability in general is going to be more based on the evolution of the tooling, or is it going to be more based on the adoption of the ideology of observability?
That's an interesting question. It's an interesting question, because these are socio-technical systems. There's no start point or end point. They feed back into each other, right? And what I immediately thought of when you asked that is just I was thinking back towards 5 years ago when we started talking about high cardinality and stuff. And like I was CEO. My first like marketing grand plan was to go out there going high cardinality. I think we got 2 customers that way. There were like 2 people out there searching for high cardinality, right? But you look at the industry now, like everybody knows what high cardinality means, and everybody knows that they need it. And there's been a lot of just the industry and our awareness of tooling has grown a lot in the direction of the stuff that we've been talking about, to the point that we've occasionally like gone, we just reflexively gone, oh no, we can't talk about that because that's alienating. And then we realized that was 2 or 3 years ago, and now we can talk about it this way, and people are super into it. So that's kind of exciting. I think that. What do I think? I think that observability is not what I would pay attention to, honestly. Observability is a means to an end. I think that the end is helping engineers own their own systems in production and not be afraid of them, right? And this doesn't mean ops people like us are going away. They're never going to not need people like us, trust me. But we're going to be more force amplifiers than we are going to be just like, we're going to be the first line of defense anymore. We're going to be what you escalate to. We're going to be the experts that you escalate to. We're going to be the ones who set the golden path and the company standards, and then help team by team, help you get your place where it is maintainable and where it isn't crashing all the time, and help you define alerts and SLOs and SLAs and SLIs and everything. We're going to be the ones who help you software engineer be the first line of defense for your code. And the reason for that is because our systems are getting to the point where it can't be done in any other way, right? We have a reputation for masochism. I know. This is not about saying, all right, time for you to suffer too. It's about, okay, software engineers, the only way we can actually make this better is if you're intimately involved in the shipping and the maintaining of your code in production. Because we can't just treat them like a black box anymore, right? Like the way that we did it with handing over ownership to ops was just like, we're just going to patch it blindly a little bit. That doesn't work anymore. And having systems that are run that way, they degenerate over time, right? You just attract all this cruft from things being like patched over and like shoved under the rug and not fully understood. And now now you get to, 10 years later to a system that nobody wants to be on call for because it's just breaking all the time. Well, of course it is. No one's ever understood it. No one has any chance of understanding it. But this is not necessary, right? Systems don't have to be this way. You can build on systems where things are well understood from day one, and they don't get all this crufty corners that nobody knows how to deal with. So like that's the goal, right? And observability is a way of achieving that goal, because for the same reason that I put my glasses on before I go driving down the freeway, because there's a whole lot less stabbing around in the dark. If you can see what you're doing, you can move more confidently, you can move more swiftly, you can, all of these things kind of go together, right? The CI/CD, like fulfilling the promise of CI/CD, having continuous delivery where you're actually shipping to production within a few minutes of writing the code, having observability, instrumenting as you go so that the software engineer who's instrumenting can then go and look at it and say, is it doing what I expected it to do? Does anything else look weird? Right. And then finding and fixing like 80% of all bugs right there in that few minute loop, right? Because it's fresh. It's, exactly what you're trying to do. All the trade-offs you just made, exactly what you didn't do, you're going to find it gets exponentially more expensive in time and money to find and fix bugs the longer it has been starting at the moment that you wrote it. Right. And so it's all about shoveling. And that's not me. There's this great Facebook research paper that they published recently that showed this. So pushing this, pushing the finding of problems forward, making systems more understandable, more comprehensible, more friendly to humans and maintainers. And it has these amazing business benefits too, because if it takes like X number of developers to maintain the system where you're shipping within 15 minutes, if you're shipping within hours, it takes at least twice as many more. And if you're shipping within days, it takes twice as many more again. If you're shipping within weeks, it takes twice as many more again. I'm definitely not exaggerating. I might be too conservative. It might be exponentially more, but it like that's just an incredible amount of waste. And that's not waste in the good way where you're like, oh well, keeping jobs, people are going to be obsolete. No, that's waste in all the things that burn people out, right? Engineers do not get burned out from shipping too much code. They get burned out from never shipping code, or for being called into work on code that they wrote 6 to 12 months ago that they can't remember. All of that waste out there is the stuff that makes software engineering a terrible job. All of the fun stuff that I'm trying to like proselytize here, I'm not saying that people should be working themselves to death. I think that any engineer has about 3, maybe 4 engineers of concentrated focus time in them per day, tops. But that's what moves business forward, is solving new creative problems that move the business forward 3 or 4 hours a day, day after day, instead of like spending, 16 to 20 hours, like just like shoveling shit and dealing with yak shaving and stuff, which is what, historically ops has ended up with the lion's share of that. But I guess that's my long-winded answer to your questions. It's not about observability. I think that the extent to which people are adopting observability in the service of these goals is something to watch. And I do think that maybe the answer to your question is yes. It's about the ideology, right? It's about buying into. So many people think that they're not tall enough to ride this ride, right? That they're not good enough. This is just for the Googles and the Facebooks. And that's not true. It's actually the opposite. The way that they're doing things now is the hard way. It is so much easier to write and ship code when you have a tight feedback loop and you can see what you're doing and you get bugs fixed much more quickly. It is so much easier. But so many people don't have the confidence to strike out and start, raising their standards for themselves. You could blame a lot of this on engineering leadership. I think a lot of engineering leadership has been too timid, too afraid to actually push for higher standards here. You can blame a lot on inertia, but in the end, it doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that we understand there's a better way to write and ship and support code, and it starts with little steps like observability and your CI/CD pipeline.
You're speaking to our hearts. We're not here to talk about us, but Stormforge as a company, we focus on waste and efficiency and all those sorts of things.
Nice. What do you do as a company?
Oh, I don't want to derail with a presentation.
Give me your elevator pitch. I would love to know.
We help companies optimize their software in how do I want to phrase this? I don't usually do the sales pitch. We help companies optimize their software so that they have less waste, so that they run more efficiently, and so that they get better bang for their buck,
Cool.
run things better, faster, cheaper.
Excellent.
But without the concepts of observability, without visibility into that ecosystem that is your own software, you can't actually get to that stage. You need to have testing, you need to have visibility, you need to have observability.
Yep.
So hearing you talk about waste, not just from a technological perspective, but also from a human perspective, that's something that we're just sitting here going, oh, this just plays right exactly into the arena that we work in.
Yeah, this whole subject really is like the mythological elephant, right? Where everyone's out there blind and like patting the elephant and seeing a different side of the problem, right? And it's like, oh, I got the nose, so I've got the feet, but like we've all got pieces of it, but we all want the same thing, right? We see that the way things are being done now is just, it can be done so much better.
Absolutely. So what are the key things, and this is a question from the Q&A, what are the key things you see people get wrong in observability, and do you have any pointers on addressing them?
Well, first of all, the easy answer, the one that people tend to make because there are so many vendors out there spending lots of money to help you make this mistake, is treating it like a 3 pillars problem, where you're just like, oh, well, I must need a logging, a metrics, and a tracing tool. That's just kind of nonsense. If you have, well, how would I put this? That said, a lot of people have metrics tools and systems that they have been working on for years, and all right, whenever you're asking someone to change the way they're doing something, I think 2 things. First of all, what you're offering them has to be an order of magnitude better than what they've got, just to account for the costs. And number 2, I think you want to make it as easy of a transition as possible. So for example, I really resisted picking up Scuba at Facebook. I was just like, one more tool. I don't want more. The way that I was convinced to try it was we were using Ganglia at the time, and Ganglia and Graphite, and we had all these Ganglia graphs, right? Well, Ganglia stores them in a giant XML dump that once a minute on one server, and so we wrote a little script to just like take that XML dump, unpack it, and ship it over into Scuba and using these wide events, and it was incredibly ugly. It was not the right way to do things, but it was right enough that it let me kind of see my world in theirs, right? So that I could use it. I knew the variable names, I knew the names of what I was looking for, I knew how things were structured, so even though it wasn't really correct, I could see the value, and it started to click to me, and nothing was being taken away. Right? Nothing was being taken away from me. I was only being offered this new tool that could answer so many questions that I simply couldn't answer using my older tool. So I'm always in favor of like building bridges like that, right? Looking for ways to build bridges between what people have and a new way. Other key things that people get wrong in observability, a big one is just like, keep every log line. Logs are precious. Like every log is sacred. Like, no, your logs are trash. Like your logs are pure trash. And especially if they're not structured, this is like security theater, right? It's just like logging theater. It's just like, I feel better about the world because I've got something and I'm paying a lot of money for it. So like a good midway step is often to just start by structuring your logs, right? Add some structure to them. Do what you can to bundle them up around, one line per request per service, and see how much more value you get out of them then. Another is dashboards, just the infinite proliferation of stupid dashboards. Because like we have this pattern, right? First of all, we have this pattern in debugging where we're like, okay, here's my dashboard. There's a spike. That must be bad. So I'm going to jump over into my logging tool, and I'm just going to look for something roughly around the same time and start searching for it, right? which is right. So there are many problems with this. One of the bigger problems is that when you're searching for it in your logging system, you're only searching for things that you already know exist or for past problems, right? And most people don't have like that good of a story there. And then often when they also want to trace it, then they jump again. They find a log ID, they jump over into the trace thing, and they try and correlate again visually. This is just like one step above like like using entrails for divining, as far as I'm concerned. It's not very scientific whatsoever, and it's got a lot of guessing going on.
God forbid your timestamps are off.
Yeah, God forbid your timestamps are off, then ooh, you're never going to find it. It's like the dirty secret in systems is just like how many outages and problems go never understood. It's just like it resolves itself, and you're just like, anybody see that? Nope. Okay, I'm just gonna walk away quietly and let me know if it happens again. Because it's very hard. It's very hard to explain problems using this current tool set. So. Oh, and dashboards, like we also have this pattern in systems where, you know, when we do figure something out, we post-mortem, right? We do a retro, and then we craft this perfect dashboard. So we're like, next time I've got the dashboard that will describe it. I can flip to it instantly and understand what's going wrong. But how many of those do you have? 15,000? You know, you just accumulate more and more and more and more dashboards, and then you can't find it in your sea of dashboards. And by the time you do find it, maybe you haven't looked at it in 6 months, and half of the data sources are no longer shipping to it. And it's just like, dashboards are not a debugging tool. Dashboards are a monitoring tool. We've gotten used to using them for debugging because we have had nothing else, but it's the wrong model. What you want is to be like, is to be using a model that's much more like using a GDB or something, where you're just like, and what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? You want to be asking questions and taking an action on the result of the question that you just asked. Dashboards are answers, right? they're just answers, and you're just flipping through answers and looking for one that maybe matches the question that you have, instead of asking questions to get to the right answer. So I have just a real prejudice against dashboards. I think that they're the worst, and people should try to get rid of them.
That lines up with, actually, there's a question in the Q&A about single panes of glass, and is that even a reasonable thing for something like this?
I mean, depends on what you want it for. If it's so that, you know, well, I don't know, like people have like TV shoots and stuff, and they want to look cool in the office and have a bunch of blinky lights behind them, they're great for that purpose. If you're in a data center and you have like a static number of racks or something, you want to just like have a pretty display, great for that. What it's not great for is anything that has to do with writing and shipping software. It's just not. It's going to give you a false sense of, you know, you can maybe have a top level thing that has your, you know, request latency errors. Great, everyone should have those. But beyond that, it's just visual noise, and most systems are too dynamic and constantly changing for a single pane of glass to even make sense. And when you've got when you are in the mindset of having a single pane of glass that will answer all your questions, you're fixed in that mindset, and that means that you're not looking at all the things you probably should be looking at. I just think that they're kind of they're used by sales teams to sell you on things, and that does not map to actual functionality or usefulness for most users.
And it's going to limit the number of questions that you're asking in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're locked in.
So speaking of number of questions that we ask, we've come to the portion of the Fireside chat where Cody and I like to do a handful of just fun rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you game?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to start, Cody?
Sure. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Favorite open source project outside of Honeycomb?
Ooh, I would have to go with, oh crap, it's the screen replacement that I have an alias to something, so I don't remember what it's called. The screen replacement that reconnects when you're on a flaky flaky network connection.
T-Mux?
Yeah, T-Mux.
Awesome.
Okay. Top 3 music albums of all time.
Top 3. St. Vincent, the one before this one, with the woman and her pink butt on the cover. I don't remember what it's called. And Janelle Monáe. I'm bad at album names, apparently. And probably something Leonard Cohen.
Nice. Love Leonard Cohen. Favorite single malt?
Whew. Okay. Well, so definitely one of the Ardbeg one of the Ardbeg bottlers, probably the Ardbeg Supernova.
Mm-hmm.
That they only did it that one year, and it's just like drinking, oh god, coffee grinds and dirt and it's chocolate, and it was just so good. Ardbeg Supernova, yeah.
With just a little bit of being hit in the head with a campfire.
Yeah.
Side note: Stockholm has an Ardbeg embassy, and it's awesome.
What?
Yeah, if you're ever in Sweden, go to Stockholm. Ardbeg embassy.
All right.
It's in Old Town. It's great. Projects or initiatives you're most proud of?
Projects or initiatives of well, I'm currently almost done refinishing my hardwood floors with a 155-pound sander. I'm pretty stoked about it.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great.
And I also, let's see if I can show you a picture. I just got divorced, and I've been retaking my home. I will show you a picture of my ex-wife's wall. So she was very, very no nonsense, very, very uber dyke. And so I've painted it to look like that.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Love it.
Revenge painting.
Late night or sleep?
Late night.
And our last one, the fun one.
Most complicated.
If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Wow, what a dangerous power. I would cap CEO pay to a multiplier of the median worker pay.
Love it.
That's fantastic.
I love that.
Or put like a charge on the high frequency trading. One of those two. I just think it would radically serve the world for good.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for putting up with our questions as if we were
This is great.
James
Thanks for
Lipton.
having me.
This has been a fantastic session. I'm gonna throw up our wait, where did I if I can find our final slide, I will throw it up. We don't usually do a lot of slides for things like this, but there we are. I found it.
And I would just want to say, Charity, thank you for coming on. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So it's bit of a fanboy. So it's really glad to have you here.
Awesome. This is really fun. Thank you for having me.
And a huge thank you to all of our attendees who, as a reminder, are benefiting charity by their attendance. Join us next month on July 15th. I hope I got that date right. Our next guest for the Fireside Chat is going to be Chris Nova. That's going to be a great one as well. And thank
Chris, I said hi.
We will.
Yeah, we'll do.